Welcome to this video against Silverum. Okay, c5. This looks a bit dubious. It looks like he wants to play some kind of Tarrasch defense. Well, I just take, I guess. And maybe now I directly attack the center. And again I attack the center. Wow, so this becomes very sharp. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Is it an idea just, to jump to e5 here? Maybe it's even better for him to take here on e5 instead of taking on d4. Exactly. But I thought I have an easy development here. And when he takes here on f2, I have a tempo with a knight here attacking him. Does he really want to castle long? Yes, maybe. Okay, I need to protect the pawn here now. I mean, in the end, I'm a pawn up at the moment, so I'm ready to suffer a bit here. And I also don't have a problem that he destroys here my pawn structure even more, because I have the bishop pair now. So what I can try is maybe, I need to support the pawn here later on. And I don't want to play bishop g5, which, secures the pawn quite easily, but I want to keep the bishop pair, so this is why I play bishop g3, and now I can support the pawn on e5 with f4. Yes, it's true that this bishop is not a good piece now. Well, the king is a good piece in the end game, so I think I'm heading for e4. There are not that many pieces left. Knight a5 is maybe strong. So I want to focus around this pawn now. Might become a very strong pawn, and yeah. Let's see. So next move, rook d1. Maybe rook d4 afterwards. I'm happy to exchange pieces here. I mean, in the end I'm still a pawn up, although it's not a very strong pawn. He needs to do something with the knight now, so it doesn't help him to double up the rooks here on the e file. Taking also doesn't help because I can play rook d5 afterwards. So next move will likely be rook to d1. He will play knight c6. I think I can already exchange here a pair of rooks, and then I jump to d6 with my other rook, and this looks pretty good. So the pawn on e5 might become very dangerous. I have ideas to play e6, bishop h4 as well, but I think e6 is very strong. Yes, and what about playing bishop to h4 now? Yeah, he wants to avoid this by playing g5, but I don't mind playing him g5. I think I just retreat here and play bishop d4 and bishop f6 afterwards. Bishop f6 is threatening. Maybe even rook to d7 when he plays rook c7 afterwards. Yeah, so he needs to play this, yeah, but what happens after rook d7? Isn't this good? He can't avoid me to... If he exchanged here, I can just... He cannot stop the pawn from promoting. This is the point. And if he moves the rook to c8, I can just take here on b7, and the whole position collapses. What I can also try is just playing rook h7, and isn't it a mate afterwards? Okay, he can play knight to e7, but this doesn't help, right? Yeah, I think after rook c8 I just play rook a7, don't take the pawn. Oops. Yeah, so rook b7 was my first idea, but this is simply threatening a mate. And winning the rook as well. Okay, and I think he can't do anything about it. Yeah, and finally this pawn became very strong. So let's see. If we look at the game, I mean, I think the opening was very unusual, and he managed it to, I think, become even his position was really good here and around here. I'm not sure about him taking here on e5. maybe it's much better just to take here on d4, winning back the pawn and then playing bishop c5. But the whole game was very, very sharp, and he had a lot of counterplay, although he was a pawn down. What I think was important for me to keep this pawn in the center here, and I didn't also want to play knight bishop h4. I wanted to keep the bishop here, and I wanted to keep the pawn on e5, and this worked quite well by just retreating and supporting this pawn with the other pawn. Okay, black managed to exchange one bishop, so this was good, I guess. And yeah, the whole idea I had later in this game was to exchange now the rooks and to push forward my pawn. I mean, if you have an extra pawn, and I had an extra pawn, you need to find yeah, a way to support this pawn and push the pawn forward. And the most important pawn in this position was the pawn on e5. It's easy for me later on also to push for f5 and e6 and to try to promote this pawn. For black, on the other hand, it's not that easy to bring a pawn or promote a pawn here. How does he want to do it? There are, even if he managed to get the pawn on c4, there are still no possibilities for him to push forward the pawns here. I have the pawn on a2 and on c3 as well. So he needs to do something with his pawn g7 and h7 later on, which he also tried, as you can see here. It was also defensive, but I mean, in the end he can try to push these pawns forward, but he's too slow. My pawn was much quicker, and yeah, so I tried to penetrate here with my bishop as well. So whenever you have a pawn that is able to be pushed forward to promote to a queen, yeah, focus your pieces around it, like I did here in this game. The rook is protecting this pawn, my king is supporting the pawn. Yeah, and finally this pawn managed to be one important piece here in the end to checkmate, or to threaten to checkmate black here in this position, because there is no possibility he can avoid it. He can play knight e7, true, but I mean, I can just take here, and yeah, it's an easy win. So thanks for watching.